The lake didn't have a name on any official map, but locals called it shale water, after the black stones lining its shallow edge. If you weren't from the area, you'd never know it was there. Its entrance was tucked behind a wall of pines, reachable only by a half-hour hike through uneven trails and overgrown brush. People didn't go by accident. They went because they meant to. For Evan and his younger brother JJ, the lake had been a private world since childhood. Even years later, as teenagers, they still sought it out on Friday nights when most boys their age were drinking, or flirting, or sneaking into places they didn't belong. The brothers didn't need any of that. They just needed water, darkness, and the quiet hum of insects rising with the dusk. On this particular Friday, the forest was cooling fast. The sky was still cracked with orange when they reached the ring of rocks at the shoreline, a spot they had claimed as theirs long ago. The lake stretched out in front of them like a sheet of cooling metal, glassy except for the faint wind carving slow ripples along the surface. They unpacked with familiar rhythm. A tackle box here, spare line there, live crickets squirming in a mesh container. Their breath made little white streams in the air, though it wasn't cold enough for that, just cold enough to remind them winter wasn't far. Evan cast his line first and settled in. The lake always grew still just before nightfall, like an animal holding its breath. He'd always liked that moment. The brief suspension of time, the quiet between day and night. But tonight, something felt slightly off. It was nothing he could explain. Just a subtle wrongness in the hush around them, too heavy, too dense. As if the lake were holding its breath for a different reason. "Perfect night," JJ said, his voice breaking the tension. "Bet we'll pull in 20 bluegill." Evan nodded, but his mind had wandered. He scanned the opposite bank automatically. They'd never seen another soul out here, no boats, no swimmers, no campers. The place didn't attract people. Too inconvenient, too isolated, which was why the movement across the lake made his throat tighten. He noticed it first, a faint disturbance in the water on the far side. Not the wind, not a fish, something larger, moving with slow intention. He nudged JJ with his elbow. "What's that?" The ripple spread outward. The surface bulged, and then someone rose from the lake. At first, Evan thought it was a trick of the light. The figure emerged in complete silence, upright, as if lifted by invisible hands. The water slid off them in long sheets. They didn't thrash, didn't cough, didn't appear to breathe at all. A person, a human shape, but standing too still, too long, in water far too cold. JJ whispered a curse under his breath. Evan didn't blame him. The figure lingered waist deep, their body swaying gently with the water, as if moved by a current no one else felt. Even from across the lake, their posture was unsettling. Not hostile, just unnatural. Evan rubbed his arms. "We should leave." JJ shook his head. "They're too far to matter. Probably swimming. No one swims in 50-degree water. No one except that person, apparently." They fell quiet again. Minutes passed. The figure didn't leave, didn't acknowledge them, just floated there, swaying rhythmically back and forth, as though the lake itself were breathing through them. Their fishing lines lay forgotten on the rocks beside them. A strange, creeping unease settled into Evan's spine, a coldness unrelated to the temperature. It wasn't fear of danger, at least, not exactly. It was the fear of watching something that should be impossible unfold with calm, patient persistence. Eventually, the figure dipped beneath the surface smoothly, silently like a stone sinking straight down. Gone. JJ exhaled shakily. Evan didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. "Think they'll come up again?" JJ whispered. But before Evan could answer, an instinct trickled through him, a quiet, primal warning that something at this lake, tonight, had shifted. What had always been their sanctuary now felt like a place holding its secrets a little too close. The sun finally sank behind the trees, pulling darkness across the lake like a curtain. The air stiffened. The shoreline faded into silhouettes, and somewhere beneath the surface, where their eyes couldn't reach, something moved with fluid silence. Evan cast a last glance across the water. There was nothing there, but he felt watched for the first time in all their years at Shale Water. He didn't know yet that the worst was not what he had seen, but what he would see next. Night settled over Shale Water like a slow exhale, pulling every last color out of the world until only blue-black darkness remained. The forest behind Evan and JJ thickened into a wall of shadow. Every sound felt sharper in the cold air. The crack of a branch, the buzzing of a lone insect, the metallic rattle of their tackle box as Evan shifted nervously. But mostly, there was silence. The kind that pressed against your ears and made your heartbeat sound too loud. JJ cast his line again, though his eyes kept flicking toward the far shore. "She'll come back up," he said. "Has to." "It might not have been a she," Evan muttered, though he wasn't sure why he said it. Something about the figure had struck him as feminine, but in a distant, unsettling way, like a painting of a woman seen through warped glass. The minutes dragged. Nothing broke the surface. Evan tried to focus on fishing, but every tug on the line felt wrong. The lake, normally teeming with bluegill, had gone eerily still. Not a nibble, not a ripple, as if all the life in it had retreated to the depths. Something is down there. Something they're hiding from. He shook the thought away. He was being dramatic. Lack of sleep, late evening, just nerves. But then JJ stiffened beside him. "Evan," he whispered. "Look." The water, maybe 20 yards out, had begun rippling. A wide, circular pattern, not violent, but deliberate. Evan felt his breath hitch. "She's closer," JJ murmured. The surface bulged slow, smooth, disturbingly calm before the figure rose again. This time, much nearer. The moonlight caught her hair first, a dark sheet slicked flat against her skull. Then her face came into view, pale and faintly reflective, like river stone. She stood there in the water up to her shoulders, eerily still. But now Evan could see her eyes, open, watching, not blinking. They were a strange color, too light to be brown, too dark to be blue, like deep water catching moonlight. And they held none of the urgency, none of the effort one would expect from someone surfacing after a long dive. They were calm, almost serene, but there was something hollow behind the serenity. JJ whispered, "How long do you think she was under this time?" "Too long," Evan said. He felt a cold spike pierce the back of his neck, as if the lake breeze had teeth. The woman's movements were graceful in a way that didn't feel human. There was no gasping for air, no shaking from the cold. She simply floated upright, swaying gently, her face fixed toward them like a compass needle locked on true north. JJ's voice trembled. "Evan, what is she doing?" Evan didn't answer, because he didn't know, because the question itself felt wrong. As they watched, her head tilted slightly, but the motion was too smooth, too fluid, like a joint bending where no joint should be. She lifted one hand out of the water. The skin glistened strangely, almost translucent in the moonlight. Her fingers were long, impossibly long, ending in darkened tips, as though stained by lake silt. Her lips curved into a faint smile. JJ stepped back. nearly tripping over the tackle box. Then she waved, a slow, graceful movement, as if inviting them, as if beckoning. Evan felt his stomach drop. "We're leaving," he said firmly, grabbing his backpack, but JJ didn't move. His expression shifted into something distant, trance-like. His shoulders loosened. His fishing pole dangled from his hands. His breath steadied as though he were falling under a spell. "JJ!" Evan snapped. "JJ, let's go." JJ didn't blink. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to speak but couldn't form the words. His eyes were locked on the woman drawn, pulled toward her presence, as though the lake itself were tugging at him. Evan grabbed his brother's arm hard. "JJ!" The contact jolted him. He blinked rapidly and looked at Evan with a mix of confusion and embarrassment. "Sorry, I don't know why I—" A splash cut him off. The woman had begun gliding toward them, her body rising higher out of the water until the top of her swimsuit broke the surface dark green, like algae or lakeweed. But that wasn't the strangest part. She wasn't swimming. She wasn't kicking. Nothing beneath the surface moved. She drifted, pulled forward by something unseen. "Evan," JJ whispered. "She doesn't look cold." Evan swallowed hard. The air itself felt colder now, as if her presence had drawn the warmth out of the night. "Don't move," he said quietly. She stopped about 15 yards from shore. Then she spoke. "Hi." Her voice was wrong immediately, too warm, too playful, as though she were greeting them in a classroom or at a grocery store, not chest deep in frigid water in the pitch dark. Evan's blood turned to ice. JJ, however, responded before he could stop himself. Hi?" Her smile widened, revealing teeth that looked too even, too smooth. "What are you doing out here?" JJ asked. She leaned her head back, letting her hair slick further behind her shoulders. "Swimming." JJ let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "Well, yeah, obviously. But, like, are you training or something?" Her eyebrows lifted with a playful challenge. "Something like that." She glided 1 foot closer, then another. Evan's breath quickened. Something in her eyes had changed, not playful now, not serene. Something colder, hungrier. She raised a hand and pointed a long, tapered finger toward them. "Come in," she said softly. "The water's perfect." Evan didn't know why, but the way she said it made the lake itself seem suddenly enormous, bottomless, ancient. "Are you crazy?" he blurted. "It's freezing." She laughed light at first, then slightly off rhythm. A beat too long. "You'll get used to it," she whispered. Her smile faltered, and in the next moment, the faint wrongness bloomed into something unmistakably horrifying. Her eyes sharpened. Her mouth twitched. Her voice dropped. "Don't leave." Evan felt the terror hit him in a single cold wave. The lake was no longer quiet. It was listening, and she wanted them closer. Evan had felt fear before real fear. Childhood fear. The kind that made your heartbeat vibrate in your throat. But what washed over him now wasn't that kind of fear. This was older, heavier, like a memory he'd never lived. "JJ," he whispered, "we're leaving." Now, the woman's expression shifted again. The smile she wore tightened, then froze into something brittle like a mask starting to crack. Her head turned slightly to the left, then the right, as if she were listening for something underwater. "Don't leave," she repeated, softer now, almost pleading. Evan grabbed his brother's arm. "Now." They backed away from the rocks, careful not to stumble, as though any sudden movement might provoke her. The woman's eyes widened, not with sadness, but with a sharp alertness. like an animal spotting prey beginning to flee. "You don't have to go yet," she murmured. "It's rude, leaving so soon." Her voice quivered on the last word, but Evan didn't slow. When they reached the tree line, JJ hesitated. "She's not chasing us," he whispered. Evan didn't turn around. "I don't care." But something in JJ resisted. His brows pulled together, confusion, fascination, a strange pull he couldn't name. "I just want to see if she's still." "No." Evan grabbed him again, firmer this time. "We go. Now." JJ swallowed hard, nodded, and followed. But even as they left, Evan felt the weight of eyes on his back, heavy and unblinking. He resisted the urge to look. When they finally reached the car, breathless, trembling, JJ slammed the door shut so hard it rattled the frame. "Should we call someone?" he asked. "Call who?" Evan shot back. "The police? And say what? A woman rose from the freezing water without breathing and smiled wrong?" JJ sank into the seat, staring at the dashboard. "We're coming back," he said suddenly. Evan whipped his head toward him. "Absolutely not. She's probably just disturbed," JJ argued. "Or mentally ill or something. You saw her, she's just a girl." "No," Evan said. "No, she's not." Something in the way she moved, the way the lake rippled around her without any visible motion from her limbs. It wasn't human, not entirely, but JJ wasn't convinced. Not yet. They didn't sleep that night. Every time Evan closed his eyes, he saw her again, those pale eyes reflecting moonlight, that too smooth glide across the water, the way she rose from beneath the surface without breaking a single ripple. He dreamed briefly of something deep in the lake, a shape, a cluster of pale arms drifting through the water like strands of hair, a mouth opening too wide, a soundless scream echoing through the depths. He woke drenched in sweat. 2 days passed before JJ brought it up again. They were in the garage helping their father with equipment when JJ said casually, "Let's go back Friday, see if she's there." Evan froze. "We're not going back." But JJ was insistent. His tone sharpened with a strange desperation. "Don't you want to know what she wanted? Why she was out there?" "No," Evan said. "I don't." JJ stared at him, jaw tight. "You're scared." "Yes," Evan said simply. JJ blinked. He was expecting a fight, not honesty. "Something's wrong with that place," Evan added. "You felt it too." JJ hesitated, then looked away. "Maybe." He didn't say the rest. Maybe it wasn't just wrong. Maybe it was calling him. That Friday evening, Evan found his brother already packing equipment into the trunk. "You're not going alone," Evan snapped. JJ shrugged. "Then come with me." Evan cursed under his breath. There was no winning this, so they returned. The forest felt different this time. The air was warmer, humid, the kind of warmth that sticks to your skin even as the sun sets. But the lake shale water was unchanged. Dark, still, waiting. As they stepped onto the familiar rocks, Evan felt a tightness coil in his stomach. The sky was a bruised purple, the moon not yet risen. A faint fog clung to the lake's surface, drifting like breath from some giant creature below. JJ set his gear down. "See? Nothing." "Great," Evan said. "Can we go?" "Wait." Minutes passed. JJ watched the water intensely. Evan watched JJ. Then movement. A ripple cut across the lake. Then another. Then stillness. Evan's heart pounded. "Let's go. I'm serious." But JJ raised a hand. "Hold on." Something rose from the water. Not her. Not yet. A dark shape broke the surface briefly. A flash of pale skin, like a shoulder or an elbow, but it sank again before either of them could identify it. J.J. Evans started, but J.J. had stepped closer to the edge, peering over the rocks. "Do you hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" J.J. tilted his head. "You don't hear it? Someone humming?" Evan heard only silence. The lake swelled, and then she appeared. This time, she emerged closer than either of them expected, only 20 yards out, water sliding off her face in perfect sheets. Her dark hair clung to her neck like wet silk. Her expression was soft, almost tender, and she was smiling at JJ, not at them, just him. "Hi," she called out softly. JJ's breath hitched. "Hi," he whispered back. Evan grabbed him. "Stop." But JJ's body seemed to loosen again, his muscles slackening, posture opening, as if surrendering to some invisible tide. Her voice drifted across the water like a lullaby. "You came back." The statement wasn't joyful. It was grateful, as if she'd been waiting, as if she'd known he would. "Come closer," she whispered. "I want to see you." Her hands rose from the water, two pale, slender shapes with impossibly long fingers. Evan felt it again, the unmistakable shift in the air, that primal warning humming in the back of his skull. JJ was stepping forward, toward the water, toward her, toward whatever waited beneath. And Evan finally understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't coincidence. She had risen the first time because she sensed them, but she had returned because she had chosen one. JJ took another step toward the water. The rocks under his shoes clicked sharply, the sound too loud in the vast silence of the lake. Evan grabbed his arm again hard. "What are you doing?" Evan hissed. JJ blinked, dazed, as if pulled from a dream. I don't know." The woman's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes stayed flat, reflective, like wet stone. Her hair floated around her in the water like strands pulled by an invisible current. "You came back," she said gently, repeating it like a promise. "I knew you would." Evan stepped in front of JJ, positioning himself between his brother and the lake. "We're leaving." The woman's head tilted. "Don't." One word, soft, but it hit Evan's chest like a fist. "We're leaving," he repeated, voice cracking slightly. Her smile faded. The lake's surface trembled. "Don't," she whispered again, but this time it was sharper, closer to a growl than a plea. Something moved beneath her. A shift of darkness just below the surface. JJ gasped. "Did you see?" "Yes," Evan snapped. "Back up." But JJ wasn't moving anymore. His body tensed, then leaned forward as if an unseen rope had been thrown around him. Tugging, gently, insistently, the woman drifted closer without paddling, without moving her arms. The water simply parted for her, carrying her toward them. Evan's breath hammered in his ears. "What do you want?" he demanded. Her eyes lifted to his. For the first time, her expression changed subtly, but unmistakably. A flicker of annoyance, of hunger. "I wasn't talking to you," she said. Her voice was colder now. No playfulness, no warmth, only intent. She raised an arm from the water. It looked normal at first, pale, slick with lake water, but as it rose higher, impossibly long fingers unfolded, stretching further than anatomy allowed. Evan felt bile rise in his throat. JJ, however, took the sight in, with an almost reverent awe. "She's beautiful," JJ whispered. "No," Evan snapped. "She's not." The woman's mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something else. "Come closer," she breathed, voice like a lullaby. I can show you. Evan felt a cold wind rise from the lake, brushing against his chest. The air stank faintly of minerals, wet stone, algae, something ancient. No, Evan said. Stay away from us. The woman blinked slowly. Then she sank. Not like a swimmer, not like someone diving. She simply dropped, as if pulled straight down by a hook through her spine. The water closed over her without a splash. JJ shouted. Where did she? Something erupted beneath the surface. A huge, violent surge of water exploded upward, drenching the rocks. Evan stumbled back, grabbing JJ just as a pale shape shot passed them beneath the surface, moving fast, impossibly fast, a blur of limbs and hair and something else. Something wrong. Run! Evan yelled. JJ hesitated, turning back toward the lake. Run! Evan screamed. JJ snapped out of it. They sprinted along the shoreline, their feet slipping on wet stone. Behind them, the lake roared. The water churned violently as something massive moved beneath it, cutting through the shallows like a shark hunting close to land. Evan felt the ground tremble with each swell of water. They reached the tree line just as a pale arm burst from the lake. Fingers splayed too long, joints bending the wrong direction, grasping at empty air where they had stood seconds before. JJ screamed. They ran blindly through the woods. Branches lashed their arms. Roots snagged their ankles. The darkness between the trees swallowed their breath. Behind them, water splashed violently. Too close. Far too close. They could hear her now, not speaking, not calling, but making a desperate guttural sound like lungs squeezing out lake water. The forest seemed endless. Evan's legs burned. JJ kept glancing back, as though compelled. Don't look, Evan gasped. But JJ did look and tripped. He hit the ground hard, air bursting from his lungs. Evan skidded to a stop, grabbing at him frantically. Get up! JJ, get up! JJ whimpered, dazed, struggling. And then, the woods went silent. No breathing, no movement, no splashing, just quiet. Evan froze, dragging JJ up, his chest heaving. Where is she? JJ whispered. Evan didn't answer. He didn't want to. Something shifted in the darkness ahead. A shape, a silhouette, wet, standing, still, the woman. But she wasn't standing as a person would. Her posture was wrong, hips twisted, shoulders angled unnaturally, her head hanging too far to one side. Water dripped from her hair in slow, heavy drops. Her eyes locked onto JJ. Why did you run? She whispered. Her neck twitched. Once, twice, like something inside her was adjusting, aligning. Evan pushed JJ behind him. His voice barely escaped his throat. Stay away. She didn't blink. I waited, she said softly. I waited so long. Her fingers curled toward the ground, dragging against the leaves. They left faint furrows in the earth. We have to go, Evan stammered. You can go, she said calmly. Her head turned, slowly, mechanically, like a camera on a mount locking into place. But he stays. JJ whimpered behind Evan. No, I didn't do anything. You came back, she said. You heard me. What are you talking about? Evan snapped. He didn't hear anything. Her eyes flickered toward Evan. You never hear, she said coldly. Not you. Something in her voice cracked. A quiet bitterness. A memory. Before they could move, she lifted her arm and dozens of droplets fell from her fingers, glowing faintly in the moonlight like liquid silver. Evan grabbed JJ's hand. Run! They tore through the woods again. The woman's scream echoing behind them, a piercing, shrill cry that didn't sound human or even animal. It sounded like something drowning and breathing at the same time. Evan pulled JJ with everything he had. Branches cut their faces. Mud sucked at their shoes. The woman's voice rose again, ragged, furious. "Come back!" But they didn't stop. Not when they reached the road. Not when they reached the car. Not even when they were miles away, and JJ sobbed into his hands, shaking uncontrollably. Because Evan knew this. She wasn't chasing them anymore. She didn't need to. She had found them. She had chosen. And she would wait again. For the first time in years, Evan and JJ didn't speak during the drive home. The shaking wouldn't stop. Their breaths came fast, shallow, jagged. The road ahead was a narrow black ribbon, swallowed by night. JJ kept glancing into the rearview mirror, as if expecting to see her standing in the middle of the road, head tilted, hair dripping, eyes locked onto his. She never appeared, but the absence didn't comfort him. It made everything worse. When they finally pulled into their driveway, JJ fumbled the keys, dropping them twice before he could unlock the front door. Their father had long gone to bed. The house was dark, silent, too silent. JJ whispered, "Do you think we should tell him?" Evan shook his head instantly. "He'll think we're lying. And we were trespassing at night. He'd be angrier about that than anything." JJ swallowed hard. "She followed us." Evan didn't want to answer. Not because he disagreed, but because he believed the same thing. They went to their separate rooms. Evan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The shadows there seemed thicker than usual, almost sticky, like something had seeped into the corners and refused to leave. He turned on his bedside lamp. The yellow glow felt warm, alive. He slept with it on. The next morning, JJ didn't come out for breakfast. Evan found him sitting on the edge of his bed, pale, eyes hollow. His voice sounded paper-thin. "She talked to me," JJ whispered. Evan's stomach dropped. "What?" "Last night," JJ said. "In my head, I heard her humming." Evan sat down beside him slowly. "Jay, you're shaken. You're imagining it." JJ shook his head violently. "No, Evan. I heard her. I heard her humming the same melody from the lake. She's waiting. She said she knew I would come back." Evan's blood ran cold. He remembered the woman's final words in the woods. "You never hear. Not you. Not him. JJ." She had been speaking to JJ the entire time. Evan grabbed his brother's shoulders. "Listen to me. We are not going back to that lake. Ever." JJ stared at the floor, jaw trembling. "What if she comes here?" Evan didn't answer. He didn't know the rules of whatever she was. He just knew that fear didn't end when you ran away. It followed. For the next week, Evan kept watch. He followed JJ everywhere, school, home, the garage, even the backyard. JJ grew irritated, but Evan didn't care. The woman's voice had gotten inside JJ somehow, and Evan wasn't about to let her finish whatever she had started. But deep down, he sensed something gnawing at the edges of reality. Something had changed. The lights flickered more often. The pipes in the house groaned at night. Cold spots appeared in the hallway even when the heat was on. And JJ kept waking at 3:11 Exactly 3:11. Evan would find him sitting upright in bed, breathing hard, staring at the far corner of the room. "What did you hear?" Evan whispered one night. JJ swallowed. Her voice. What did she say? JJ's voice cracked. "She said I'm late." Their father noticed the boy's behavior around day 4. "You two look exhausted," he said at dinner. "Are you staying up playing games? Watching movies? You can tell me if something happened." But they couldn't. They wouldn't be believed. and the truth felt too dangerous to speak aloud, like saying her name might open a crack in the air and let her through. Evan forced a smile, lied about homework, and their father let it go. Parents believe what they need to believe. By the second week, JJ stopped arguing when Evan followed him. The fear had sunk bone deep. He jumped at noises. He flinched when tapping came from the pipes. He avoided water, even the sink. One night, Evan found him scrubbing his hands over and over, as if trying to wash something off that wasn't there. "Stop," Evan said gently. "She touched me," JJ whispered. "When we were running, in the forest, I felt something brush my ankle. Cold. I thought it was a branch, but..." He broke down then. "I think it was her." Evan wrapped an arm around him, heart pounding. "It's okay. You're home. She can't reach us here." He hoped it was true. He didn't believe it. Then came the night the humming returned. Evan was half asleep when he heard a faint sound drifting through the wall between their rooms. A soft, lilting melody. Too cold, too smooth, too familiar. His blood froze. "JJ." He sprinted to the hallway. Light from under JJ's door flickered pale, watery, like reflected moonlight. "Jay!" Evan shouted. He slammed the door open. JJ stood at the window, hands pressed against the glass, breathing fog onto the pane. His head tilted, mirrored in the same unnatural angle the woman had shown in the forest. The window was open. The cold night wind billowed inward, and JJ whispered, "She's here." Evan lunged for him, yanking him away from the window. "Jay! Wake up!" JJ gasped, as if torn from a trance, legs buckling. "I saw her," he whispered, standing in the yard in the dark. Evan forced himself to turn toward the window. The yard was empty, but the grass directly beneath the window was wet, drenched, as if something had been standing there dripping for hours. For the next few nights, Evan slept on JJ's floor. The humming stopped. The tapping faded. The cold spots disappeared. Evan let himself believe she was gone. People move on. Even things that aren't quite people. Maybe she had found someone else. Maybe the lake had claimed her again. But she wasn't gone. She was patient, watching, waiting, listening for the right moment. Evan just didn't know yet. The lake never let its chosen go. Not even after they escaped its water. Not even after they ran. And not even after she disappeared from the yard. Something changed on the 10th night. Evan didn't know what woke him at first. A shift in the air. A heaviness in the house. A pressure. Subtle but undeniable. Like the moment before a storm breaks. He sat up on the floor beside JJ's bed. The room was dark except for a thin silver line of moonlight cutting through the blinds. JJ slept restlessly, murmuring beneath the blankets, his forehead slick with sweat. Evan listened. Nothing. But the silence felt wrong again. Too thick. Too deliberate. He stood quietly, careful not to wake JJ, and crept toward the window. The blinds were trembling slightly, just enough to betray a breeze that shouldn't exist. He lifted one slat with his finger. The yard was empty. But the grass beneath the window gleamed again, wet under the moonlight. Evan froze. The wetness wasn't random this time. It wasn't a patch. It formed a shape. Footprints. Bare. Small. Leading away from the window toward the far tree line. He dropped the blinds instantly. His pulse hammered. He shook JJ awake. "JJ, wake up." JJ groaned softly, eyes fluttering. "What time is it?" "Doesn't matter. Get up." As JJ sat up, Evan noticed something that made his stomach clench. The hem of JJ's pajama pants was damp. He reached down and touched the fabric. Cold. Like lake water in early spring. Did you open the window? Evan whispered. JJ blinked, confused. No. Why? Evan didn't answer. He couldn't. The next morning, Evan stayed silent through breakfast. Their father chatted idly, work, errands, someone down the street selling their boat. Normal things, mundane things, things that only existed in a world where lakes didn't hide impossible creatures. JJ barely touched his food. Their father frowned. You two sure you're okay? JJ lifted his head. His voice cracked. Dad, what do you know about shale water? Evan's spoon dropped onto his plate with a clatter. Their father stiffened. Where did you hear that name? He asked quietly. JJ blinked. We've been fishing there since we were kids. You know that. Their father's face drained of color. Boys, he said softly. No one has fished shale water in decades. The room went silent. Dad, Evan whispered. What are you talking about? Their father hesitated, then glanced at the window, as if making sure no one else was listening, not even the house. When I was your age, he said, people used to disappear there. JJ's breath hitched. Their father continued, voice low. Not hikers, not campers, swimmers. Evan's stomach twisted. Bodies would show up days later, their father said. Sometimes not at all. My parents forbade me from going anywhere near that water. Why? JJ whispered. Their father leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. Because everyone who vanished had gone into the lake by choice. The words carved themselves into Evan's spine. By choice, not dragged, not tricked. Called. That night, JJ refused to sleep. He sat upright in bed, hugging his knees, staring at the window as though expecting hands to appear on the glass. Evan sat with him, watching the clock creep toward midnight. JJ whispered, Do you think she ever wanted to hurt us? Evan didn't answer. He didn't know. He wasn't sure the word hurt applied to something like her. JJ swallowed. She didn't look angry. Not really. She looked lonely. Evan stared at him. The thought was terrible because it felt true. She chose you, Evan said quietly. Lonely or not that matters. JJ hugged himself tighter. For a long time, they said nothing. Then JJ's voice trembled. I keep thinking about the way she looked at me, like she recognized me. Evan closed his eyes. He hadn't expected that, but maybe he should have. Maybe the lake didn't choose randomly. Maybe it remembered. In the early hours of morning, Evan drifted into an uneasy sleep. When he woke, sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds. JJ was gone. His heart lurched. He sprinted into the hallway. Jay! No answer. He ran to the kitchen. Empty. The bathroom? Empty. Front door? Unlocked. Evan ran outside barefoot. Jay! Silence. Then, faintly from the direction of the woods behind their house, a voice. Soft. Melodic. Humming. The same melody from the lake. No, Evan whispered. He ran. Branches slapped his arms. Thorns scratched his legs. He didn't stop. He broke into the clearing behind the woods and stopped dead. The ground was wet, a trail of footprints bare. Small led into the trees, then curved away, vanishing toward the distant shape of the hills, toward the lake, toward shale water. Evan's throat closed. A breeze drifted past him, cool and damp. It carried a smell he recognized immediately. Lake water. Cold. Ancient. Waiting. He knew then. The lake had never been gone. It had simply been patient. And the woman had never stopped calling. It was only a matter of time. Evan stared at the distant trail until his vision blurred. He whispered the truth aloud, to no one. Once the lake chooses you, it never lets you go. The wind shifted. Somewhere far away, water rippled, and the humming began again, as soft as breath, as cold as the deep. Still calling, still waiting, still echoing through the trees. And this time, he feared JJ would answer.